My name is Taylor Levy, and for my paper, I researched the marginalization of people with mental illness. Why should we learn about the marginalization of people who undergo mental illnesses? There are multiple reasons why this marginalized group should be learned about. According to Perlman, it is becoming more prevalent for those experiencing mental illnesses to be targeted and oppressed. As we are noticing from the current COVID 19 pandemic, mental illnesses are becoming more apparent. Because mental illnesses are growing, so are the stigmas and biases behind them. In order for us as a society to normalize mental illnesses and destigmatize them, we need to learn about the stigmas this group faces and then learn how to effectively treat them as well. As I had mentioned in the previous slide, there are multiple biases and stigmas against people with mental illness. In the Grown Home article, they mention various themes of microaggressions that exist against these people. There were three themes Grown Home's article discussed. These themes are stereotyping mental illnesses, ignoring the diagnosis of mental illnesses, and invalidating people's experiences. One of the most common biases we often hear about people with mental illnesses is they are dangerous to society. Because they are seen as dangerous to society, they are also seen as incapable of doing things that people who don't experience mental illness are. Another microaggression that is seen is invalidating someone else's experience with mental illness. For any of you who have experienced a mental illness, I am sure you know that your symptoms aren't always the same as someone else who may experience the same diagnosis. By comparing two people's symptoms of the same diagnosis and saying one person is more severe than the other, we invalidate the other person's experience with their disease. Lastly, another microaggression this group faces is people ignoring that mental illness exists. By ignoring the concept of mental illness, people who suffer from them won't feel comfortable enough to reach out for help. This could lead to other health or social disparities. While mental illnesses are usually all grouped together, individual mental illnesses affect certain health and social disparities differently. The first diagnosis that will lead to certain health disparities is bipolar mood disorders. According to the World Health Organization, people who experience a bipolar mood disorder have a 35 to 50% higher mortality rate than the general public. This group of people also experience a 20 to 25-year life reduction due to comorbidities. These comorbidities include cardiovascular, respiratory, and infectious diseases, hypertension, and diabetes. Because of these various comorbidities that can occur, you can obviously see why this group of people would have a higher mortality rate as well as a life expectancy reduction. Another form of mental illness that experiences not only health disparities but social disparities as well is schizophrenia. The World Health Organization discusses the various health disparities schizophrenic patients face. Schizophrenic patients are 12 times more likely to die from suicide, which is another leading cause of death among mentally ill patients. People with schizophrenia are 2 to 3 times more likely than the general public to develop diabetes. And lastly, people with schizophrenia have a higher risk of developing tuberculosis because of various social disparities. These social disparities include being homeless, living in an institution, or living in a prison. Because all of these health and social disparities, people would believe this group isn't resilient. However, that is far from the truth. When it comes to the people who experience mental illnesses, they are very resilient. One of the biggest factors to their resilience is the concept of relatedness. Relatedness is defined as an individual feeling socially or emotionally connected with others. For people who suffer from mental illness, being able to relate to others with the same disorder makes them feel connected and not outcasted by others. By being able to see that others that have the same diagnosis are able to recover and overcome their illness, they too will realize this disease doesn't define them and they can overcome it. As I am sure some of you realize that having a strong social support allows you to reach out and get the help you need, this is the same idea for people who undergo mental illness. Even though being able to relate to others and feeling accepted by their peers, there are still various barriers that prevent this group from receiving adequate treatment. One of the main barriers that occur with mental illness is patients receiving adequate and effective treatment. The largest obstacle that impacts effective treatment is insurances. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Medicaid is the largest payer of mental health services. They provide health coverage to every 1 in 4 adults. In 2012, under the Affordable Care Act, all 50 states were supposed to expand Medicaid coverage to all eligible people. They did this by removing barriers such as income qualifications and not basing eligibility on disability status. That following year, the Supreme Court overturned that all states must expand Medicaid eligibility and let the states decide themselves whether or not to expand Medicaid coverage. Sadly, over half the states have currently chosen not to expand Medicaid coverage. The states who have decided to expand Medicaid coverage have seen multiple positive outcomes, such as better compliance to medications, more regular and attentive care, and an improvement in the patient's overall mental health. It is important that all 50 states expand Medicaid eligibility so more people who experience mental illnesses can receive the correct care and improve their mental well being. The National Alliance on Mental Illness is actively trying to expand Medicaid coverage by having people sign petitions or writing letters to Congress. By doing this, I hope to see an increase in Medicaid coverage in all 50 states in the next few years. After reading multiple articles about the marginalization of people with mental illnesses, I realized that although we are taking steps to destigmatize and effectively treat mental illness, there are still more actions we need to take as a society to fix it completely. Like I had said with the COVID-19 pandemic and people experiencing high levels of stress and isolation, mental illnesses are only going to increase. As a future healthcare provider, I want my patients to not only be open and trustworthy of me, but the healthcare system altogether. By normalizing mental illnesses and making the care for them more affordable and available, we will hopefully see an increase of patients with mental illnesses putting trust back into the healthcare system and receiving treatment.